Hello, guys, welcome back to another episode here on European Confessions. There is a message that I received. This message was sent to me by one of our dear listeners. He was saying that he is from Ghana, but he is currently staying in Europe. The message reads like this. Hello, my brother, how are you? Can you please post for me as anonymous? My English is not that good because English is not my first language, but I will try as much as I can to write my story in a way that you can understand. My brother, I am a man who is aged 48 years old. I am a married man and I have one child with my wife that I married when I was still back home in Ghana. So this story of mine, it did not happen when I was here in Europe, but it happened when I was still there back home in Ghana. Right now, I am permanently based in this foreign land where I am staying in Germany. I came here to Germany in the year 2011. When I was still a young man back home in Ghana, I used to work at my parents' small plot. It was a plantation, but not a very big plantation. At that plantation, we used to cultivate palm oil, and back home life in the village was very difficult, and there were many days whereby you could see that this is just a matter of survival. We are not living, we are not enjoying life. It was all about survival. When we were a little bit mature, that was when we were forced to hustle for our own selves because our father was such a irresponsible father. Sometimes he would come back home, and if you would find any money that will be lying around in the house, you would not even care what was the intended purpose for the money that you would steal from the house. Once you would have taken that money from the house, you would go and drink alcohol. Using that money, sometimes it will be the last money that will be left in the house. My father was an alcoholic. He had a very big problem with alcohol consumption. My father would go around the village asking for loans, and when it will be time for us to harvest our crops, then my father will bring those people that you will be owing so much money. The moment that we will be selling our crops, that is when our father will be taking the money from us and handing it over to the people that would have given him the money. All of this money, my brother, that my father used to borrow around the village, he would just spend it on alcohol and nothing else. So many times when we would speak with our father and we would tell him that in the house there is no food, there is nothing, then our father will tell us that we are now all grown men. We were supposed to be responsible so as to go to the plantation, cultivate some crops so that we can sell those crops, and when it will be harvesting time, we will be able to sell those crops on the market. But if we would go to the plantation and start cultivating, when my father would see that the crops are now good, they are fit to be taken to the market, that is when he would tell us that this is his land. He can do whatever he wants with the money that we would have gotten. If we would have gone to sell the crops to the market, life was very difficult, and our father didn't even care. We grew up in a messy environment such that by the time that I started working at the mortuary, I was not even afraid of anything because of the environment that I grew up in. In our home, herbs would be lying everywhere. I would see my father using a lot of charms. My father was a man who used a lot of charms. Some of these charms, he would use them on his relatives. Then some of the charms, he would use it on some of his enemies that were staying there in the village where we used to stay when I was still a young man. So these charms that my father used to use on some of his relatives and his enemies, this charm, when my father would use it, he would make sure that he will steal your destiny far away from you, so that you can suffer for the rest of your life. This is how my father used to perform all of these charms. What my father would do is that he would buy a very long red cloth, then he would cut it into several pieces. After doing so, he would then send us to go and buy a particular pen, red in color. He didn't want you to buy a black pen or a blue pen. All that he wanted whenever he would send you to buy a pen is a pen that will be red in color when it will be writing. So even if it meant that the shop that had a red color will be at the next village, which will be very far, you were supposed to go there. My father never wanted any excuses. When you would have gone and if you would have find that red pen, then my father would take that red pen and he would start to write names, different names. Some of the names that he would write were names that belonged to our relatives. Some were the names that belonged to the people that were staying in that village. Then he would walk around the bushes as he would be tying the red cloth that had the names of his enemies written on them. He used to tie this red cloth on very small trees, not big trees. So sometimes he would go and drop off this red cloth that had the names of his enemies written on them on some forbidden rivers. Some of the rivers where you would go and drop these charms were rivers that were well known to have water spirits living inside them. Sometimes he would go and drop off these charms in different caves. Whenever he would go to those forbidden rivers or into the forbidden hills and mountains, he never went with me, but he would always bring along my little brother. So whenever my little brother would return back from the trip wherever they would have gone to with my father, then my little brother will tell me everything that would have happened. If they had gone to those forbidden rivers that had water spirits living inside them, what my father used to do is that he would take a small glass bottle, then he would drop off the cloth that contained the name of his enemies into that glass bottle, and he would tie a big stone on that small glass bottle and he would throw it into that forbidden river. And there was this other particular trip whereby my father and my little brother, they went to this other particular area which was very far. They actually walked for the whole day. This is what my little brother told me. And when they arrived at this other particular forest that had a lot of mountains, as soon as they had climbed to the top of the mountain, that is when my father and my little brother saw that in this other cave in which my father wanted to go inside so that he can drop off his charms, there was this other animal that my little brother could not properly describe. The way that he described this animal that was standing at the entrance of the cave, according to my little brother, he said that the animal looked as if it was a baboon, but this baboon, it was blind. It did not have the eyes to see, but yet it could see. But this animal was not as big as a baboon. It was like a small monkey that was blocking the entrance that led into that cave. Then my father told my little brother that he was not supposed to move and he was not supposed to look at that creature that was standing in front of that cave directly into its eyes. He was always supposed to look at the ground. My father then told my little brother that he was not supposed to turn around. He had to stand still. Then my father walked towards that creature and my father spoke with that creature.